Hi, I'm Kara.
And I'm Adam. Welcome back to Crunchy Cozy Games. So we have been counting down our top 100 games of all time.
That we played last year.
That we played last year, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And this is it.
This is the end of the list.
That's right. This is our top 10 games that we played all of last year. Our top 10 games that are in our collection that we're just big fans of.
Yeah. It's so exciting.
And, the question that I think a lot of people have on their mind is, okay, that's great. We know a lot about your game tastes, so what's next? And for me, we've got some ideas to put together some other top 10 lists, some other things that we can go through. But I really want to dive into some of our favorite games and talk about, what makes them our favorite games.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we've always had this kind of concept of, a review that's not really like a critical review, but more just like, if you're buying a game, here's what we think of it.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of come up with the Crunchy Cozy scale of you get one rating for how crunchy your game is, how deep, strategic, how thinky it is.
Yep. And then one rating for how cozy your game is. And that, cozy means different things to different people. Mm-hmm. So how enjoyable we find it to play.
Right.
And, that could be anything from theme and aesthetic to, some like cozy gameplay style or pieces. I mean, cozy can mean a lot of things, right? And so when we think about like a crunchy rating and a cozy rating, there could be two very, very vastly different games that have the exact same rating on both scales, right? Like we're not this of course has been a ranking.
Yeah.
Right? But in general, some games are really good for some people and some games are really good for other people.
Right.
A game wouldn't exist if there wasn't somebody that liked it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So stay tuned for that. We're really excited to kind of go through and give some crunchy cozy reviews. That's a little bit of a tongue twister.
It is.
Didn't think of that when we named it. So what do you say we dive in?
Yeah, you want me to start us off?
Why don't you kick us off?
Okay, my number 10 is Quacks of Quedlinburg.
Mm-hmm.
I just adore Quacks.
That is, I think, the definition of a cozy game, as it were.
I think that it is just such a fun game to play. It is one that we've played with a variety of people. Mm-hmm. It's also one that I know that there are several expansions for it, but I'm not super interested in the expansions. I really just kind of love Quacks as it is. And we've played it so many times and it's just such a good time every single time. There's that element of push your luck. Do you draw an extra piece from the bag? And then, I don't super love deck builders, but building a bag is different.
Okay, fair.
But there is also that aspect of, the fun thing is putting those pieces on your board and collecting your points, and it's such a fun game. I 1,000% recommend it to a lot of people.
Well, and it's funny because I remember I got this game for you for Christmas a few years back now, and you kind of looked at the box and you were a little bit like, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
So, justification.
It's such a good game. It's such a good game. My number 10, Quacks of Quedlinburg.
All right, my number 10, we kind of went from something that's cozy to, I think, something is much more crunchy, and that is Terraforming Mars.
Sure, yeah.
So I really like this game a lot, and I think it may have been one of the first real crunchy games that we got into. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to this game. I mean, and on the surface of it, on the surface of this game, it seems like one that is maybe very dry, because you are... you're adding oxygen to the planet, and you're adding heat to the planet, and you're adding water to the planet.
The theme is not, inherently interesting.
No, I would say the theme is dull. But what makes the game super interesting is all the cards that you've got, that you are building this tableau for. Mm-hmm. Now, I am of the mindset that I learned recently that the game is actually based on a series of books, which... makes a little bit more sense, but the cards, they're all stock images, and so you play one card that's you get algae, and that might increase heat, or it might increase, production of food or whatever else.
Yeah.
And then you play another card that's like Mafia, which increases your currency, and it's like, how do those two things go together?
But apparently it's something in the books that we don't.
I don't think that it is, but
well,
but it's sort of the kind of interesting story that you tell yourself with it. I really love the Prelude expansion.
I would almost say that it is criminal that is not just part of the game.
Yeah, I would hesitate to play the game without it, because
Yes.
otherwise it has this very slow ramp up of generating resources.
So slow.
Whereas when you play with that Prelude expansion, you start as like a corporation with an objective. You start with more resources, and so you can kind of start to figure out your path to success a little bit earlier on in the game.
Exactly. Well, and start doing stuff. I mean,
Right.
that's the thing about games with that like super slow start. It just feels like each turn just drags and drags, because you don't feel like you're accomplishing anything
Right.
at the beginning, because the increase is so it's so incremental.
It is.
And
this is one of those games where I always break it down into, people like to see numbers go up.
that's
And
true.
this is a game where the numbers all go up. I mean, you increase your titanium production, you increase
Yeah.
your currency production, you increase your food,
Mm-hmm.
and you get to move these different cubes on there that then gives you more cubes.
Mm-hmm.
It's very silly. The theme is incredibly dry, but I find it very satisfying.
It is a
time
very
to play.
satisfying game. Even more so now that we have those covers for the boards.
Yeah.
And double layer.
If you have pets or small children at home, you absolutely need to get some acrylic overlays with the base game, because, I mean, that table gets nudged, and unless you have a
Those
photographic
little
memory,
cubes go flying.
that's it for you. So, yeah, definitely recommend the upgrades. But my number 10, Terraforming Mars.
Number 9 for me is a fun little tile game, and that is Barren Park.
Ooh.
Yeah.
This is another one that I got, and I think you looked at the box and you judged me super hard.
Well,
So I am 2 for 2 in your top 10. I'm just pointing that out.
I think that Barren Park. I think you're wrong. I think I got you Barren Park.
You absolutely did not.
Are you sure?
100%.
Okay. Well, anyways, Barren Park is an adorable game where you're building just like a zoo for bears.
Mhm.
And
A bear park.
but what I really like about this game is that, it is a polyomino game, but the way that you collect the tiles is super unique. I think that the flexibility of the 4-piece board that you kind of build as you go is really unique to a game like this as well. And they have designed the game so that the parts that are satisfying are also rewarding.
Yeah.
Right? Like you cover up a space perfectly and you get to unlock the next thing, or you get to get that perfect piece. And there's bonuses for completing the whole board and playing your polyominoes perfectly. It is so satisfying. The art is pretty cute.
Yeah.
The little bears are adorable. But yeah, I adored this game.
It's great.
Barren Park, number 9.
All right. My number 9 is a game that I think you put criminally low.
Sure.
It is a 2-player only game.
Okay.
And it's a drafting game, which I think is what makes it super interesting. And that is Seven Wonders Duel. I think this game is just super cool, because I love Seven Wonders already, and I think that this simple 2-player version of it is maybe better.
It's very cool.
It is. I love how you set up the cards for each age, and you've got this, one row is flipped up, so you know what each of the cards are, and then the other is turned face down, and so they're not revealed until you pull all the cards that are covering them up off the...
Well, and it's such a unique way to do, like a draw pile.
Yeah.
Right? And you think about the regular Seven Wonders game where you're passing the hands around. And so everybody can kind of see what other people have passed on. And I think that creating those, card stacks, as it were,
Yeah.
is a really cool way to create that same effect and not just have like a boring draw pile.
Well, and it still has all the things that I love about Seven Wonders. It still has the chains of, if you've got this, then you can get this for free.
Yeah.
The other thing that I really like about it is that you're really managing kind of both aspects. Whereas in Seven Wonders, you're really only worried about your two neighbors.
Right.
In this game, you're watching your opponent and trying to figure out, like, okay, what's the thing that they're going to go for? And is this my chance to either build up what I have or stop them from accomplishing their goal?
Right.
And I remember in one of the games that we played pretty early on last year, we got to the third age, and I had a choice of basically stopping you from achieving victory in one way or stopping you from achieving victory in no way. And it was this, like, terrible moment for me where I was like, I have lost this game because you've played it so well. And you won with science, which just feels mean.
Well, I also think something else that's really satisfying about this game is that, because we recently played regular Seven Wonders again, and I think that the war aspect and the battle aspect of Seven Wonders Duel, where you have that board that's between you, where you're pushing back and forth across that board, is such a clever addition because it makes the battles feel like they have more stakes.
Well, and it's also kind of a little bit of a push your luck of, okay, I'm not specializing in military right now, so I'm going to ignore you until you get to this point, but there's always kind of a danger in that.
There is.
You never know if they're going to draw a special card that then gives them 3 that you weren't anticipating.
Right, because you can score big points with military, but you can also afford to ignore it for a little bit, but not too long. It's
a good balance.
It's good.
So yeah, I love it. Number 9, Seven Wonders Duel.
My number 8 is a lovely tableau builder called Verdant.
I guess you haven't talked about that.
Yeah, I haven't talked about it yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that this game is really the definition of a cozy game. You are literally building a house full of coziness.
Yeah.
By creating perfect homes for your plants with the perfect light, full sun, partial sun, shade, and you're collecting these plants, you're putting beautiful pots on them if you can, if they're growing well enough, and then the rooms that you lay as well, you're collecting kind of decorations. You're collecting decorations that also match the colors of the rooms and create this they're just so beautiful. I really enjoy this game a lot.
It's a great one. I definitely think that of those like AEG puzzly games, it's maybe my second favorite. But yeah, I enjoy it a lot. I like how it's kind of set. Yeah. Neat.
Yeah. Number 8.
Verdant. All right. Number 8 for me is my biggest surprise of last year.
Oh, yeah?
It's a game that I think you probably have seen coming because I have raved about it since the first time we played it. And that is a little Garphill game called Architects of the West Kingdom.
I'm not surprised that it's where it is.
This is a worker placement game, which there's a lot of those. But what's so unique about this game is that with most worker placement games, you start off with like 4 or 5 workers.
You gain more throughout the game by unlocking stuff.
With this one, you start off with, I don't remember, but it's like 30. You get so many. And I love that when you put a worker on an action, like to get bricks, you get 1 brick. You place a second worker on there, you get 2 bricks. You place a third one on there, you get 3 bricks. And so the more workers that you're placing on these actions, the more stuff you get.
Yep.
Now, the other thing that's really unique about it is that they have a really fun mechanism for getting your workers back.
Right. Well, and it's one that, like, when we first started playing it, I was so hesitant to use it because I thought it felt so mean.
Yeah.
But you kind of end up forced to, and it really is so fun. After that, we just kind of leaned in.
Yeah. You send everybody to jail. You literally go in and you say, I'm going to send all these workers to jail. And so you take them all off an action space and put them all in jail. And you get 1 coin for every piece that you lock up. And then other players, if they want to get them out of jail, they then pay them and they get those workers back. So it is completely fascinating in how all of that works because what seems to be kind of a theme in the Garfield games is that you've got kind of you've got these different point tracks, and so one of the point tracks that you have is sort of your morality, like are you going to the black market to get supplies, and the more that you do that kind of stuff, the more points it's going to take away from you at the end of the game, but you're essentially creating a little shortcut for yourself.
Right.
And I just find that so fascinating because it kind of adds a role play element to what's just a regular worker placement game. We played very recently this year Paladins of the West Kingdom, and not to give anything away, but I think it slightly edges Architects out for me. I do. Sure. Like I would probably rank them right next to each other with Paladins, given the slight edge. And I am just a total fan of these types of games. I want all of them now. But yeah, this was an absolute delight. I cannot wait to play it with different people, especially some of our friend groups that we've acquired and playing games. Yeah. Because I know it's going to be one that just sings for them as well.
Yeah. Cool.
So yeah, my number 8, Architects of the West Kingdom.
My number 7 is Cascadia.
Uh-huh.
Those games ended up right next to each other on my list.
I think that's the right ranking.
Yeah, I think that, this is one where, honestly, it could go either way for me. Sure. Depending on the play that we have. And I think that the playthroughs that we had of them last year just ended up, I thought that the Cascadia play was a little bit better. Yeah. I think that the thing that I like about Cascadia over Verdant is that the board is a little more flexible.
Well, it is what you make it.
Exactly. And with the hex shape versus the regular card shape, you automatically have more places to go, more things to build off of. And then the point system is also just more flexible. I think that, Verdant ends up being a little bit rigid in like the way that you get locked into things. Right. Whereas even if you feel stuck, you're not locked.
Right.
With Cascadia.
Well, and what I love about Cascadia is how it scores at the end of the game. Because unlike Verdant and Calico and even Fit to Print, which are all kind of in that AEG puzzly funny game, this one gives you so many different ways to score, because you can score terrain, you can score the animals, and so even like you said, if you realize like, I've been trying to get these elks and they just aren't getting drawn, you could still win by having the most forest or the most plains. Sure. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it, that you're really maximizing as much as you can.
Sure.
But yeah, I adore that game. I think it is incredible.
Yeah, so number 7, Cascadia.
Okay, my number 7 is my favorite puzzle game.
Okay.
And it's the OG for a series of games that we've talked a lot about on this list, and that is Azul.
Ooh.
I think the original Azul is my favorite. I'm a little bit torn back and forth. I really like most of these games. I think Queen's Garden is... Maybe they tried to do a little bit too much, but the classic Azul, I think, is just such a great game in that it is very simple to teach, and it's very simple for most people, I think, to understand. It can get a little mean, if you get somebody stuck with a whole bunch of tiles that fall to their floor, that always hurts. Yeah. But, wise players can kind of anticipate that coming and figure out different moves for that.
Right.
The only thing that I would say against this that I maybe prefer in other games is that this one's win condition, or this one's end condition, is that somebody fills out a horizontal row of their tiles. And I almost wish it was more just about rounds, because I feel like when somebody has that one spot open, all everybody is doing is watching to see if they're going to pull that
rather than playing their
own thing. Yeah. But I just really enjoy the drafting mechanism in this game of, you got 4 tiles on a little circle. That's the shop. You take all of a certain color, put it on your board in different spaces, and you try to fill that out. And then whatever lines you fill, and there's one space all the way down to 5,
Mm-hmm.
you then move over to your window.
Mm-hmm.
Or floor, I guess. I'm now getting the Azul confused.
I think it's a wall.
Well, either way.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful game. The art style is absolutely lovely. It is equal parts crunchy and cozy, so I think it's a delight. Number 7, Azul.
My number 6 is one of my favorite worker placement games that has a lovely theme, and that is Everdell.
Yeah.
It's just a really good game.
Yep.
I really like it. It's not one that we bring to the table a whole lot, like you mentioned. It's just kind of a big game.
Yeah.
And now that we've played it with our first couple of plays were only with 2 people.
Yeah,
and
that game can be brutal with 2 people.
It is one of those, it's like somebody gets ahead and it just doesn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think with 4 people it is, or just more than 2, it would probably be fine at 3. It just feels a little more balanced.
Sure.
But I enjoy worker placement as like an overall gameplay style. I think that the seasons are really interesting. I love building my little town. I think it has the right amount of like resource management, and like giving you the opportunity to like build things for free based on what you have. I really like that like chaining element. And then I think one maybe criticism would be that I think sometimes the objectives that sit on the tree can be a little
Yeah.
Unfair, unfortunate. Like
they're easy, I think, sometimes for people to miss.
Yes. Well, and sometimes they're just so, like we've talked about with secret objectives for a lot of games, sometimes like trying to go for that objective is actually going to do you a disservice in playing the overall game.
Right.
And I think that's true of a lot of different games, not just Everdell. But regardless of those things, I still really love Everdell. I think that it is cozy, it is beautiful, the art style is so darling. And yeah, it's a great game.
I have been a convert to that game.
Mm-hmm.
I started off really not liking it because it did feel a little bit unfair and unbalanced, and I have since come around on it because it does sometimes come down to the luck of the draw, but once you kind of learn those cards and how everything's going to attach, it starts to be pretty smooth.
Yeah.
I remember the first time we looked at the rule book for that game, we were like, wait, so you're only going to get like 4-ish turns?
Yeah.
And it feels very like, that's it? You only start with 2 workers, and those are the actions that you get, and then, you get more as the game goes, but it's kind of surprising to me how much...
Well, how much you get done.
With those short amount of turns, because you find ways to add to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's number 6, Everdell.
All right, so cozy part's done. Let's get into some crunch.
Ooh.
My number 6, Twilight Imperium.
Ooh, yeah. Not surprised at all.
This is a game we're maybe not gonna play for quite some time.
It's hard. It is hard to plan something like that.
I think if you go to Board Game Geek, you look at this one and it says estimated playing time. It's like 240 to like 560 minutes. And that's 100% correct.
It really is, yeah.
This is a clear your Saturday. This is what you were doing that day. It reminds me of when I was a kid, I had a group of friends that played Risk. And Risk is also one of those games that just takes forever. But the key difference between this and Risk is this is fun.
The game is just more interesting than Risk is.
Well, because
honestly.
there's so much that you can do, and there's so many different factions that you have a strategy outside of let's roll dice and fight over this space. You definitely do that. I mean, that's kind of unavoidable at some points, but this is really a game about diplomacy.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to strike up deals with your neighbors, and you want to kind of bargain for that. In fact, a big phase of this is there's actual votes that you go to, and depending on how much influence you have, that's how many votes you get to cast. And so you can also sell your votes or make deals and alliances with people based on those things.
Yeah.
each faction has their own ability. Like you might have a faction that is better at tech, and so they get a lot more tech points that they can go into and they can research technology faster. You might have a faction that is like really good at diplomacy, and so they've got extra actions to take more to benefit other groups of people and give away some things. I love that. I think it's so cool that they've got a faction that's essentially unique to each person's play style. Now, it's definitely one of those that, you know, because it's a 4X game, you can get eliminated and that's it. Like, sorry, thanks for coming.
Yep.
And that sucks. I totally understand that portion of it. But it's also just one of those games that you might clear your Saturday to play it, but it's well worth it because you're going to be sitting there kind of like learning about your friends and learning about their strategies and what they would do. But I found the whole thing very intriguing. And so that when there was a battle, it was like, oh, this is going down. We got to watch this. And, you know, there's this tension of anytime a battle's about to start of like, okay, they just brought in their war sun and their Imperial ship and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, this is about to go down. And then there's also those moments where the dice just aren't rolling and the single war fighter takes out the war sun. You know, like you get these great narratives and these stories behind it that it's just so fascinating. Now, it's definitely one that if you've invested 5, 6, 7 hours into the game and something like that happens,
if you lose.
Oh, that's going to hurt so much. But if you can kind of take that out of it and just enjoy the ride, I think it is something that is completely unlike any game that we have in our collection. But if you can find friends to play this game with that are as dedicated as a gamer as you are, it is a blast. My number 6, Twilight Imperium. If that sounds like your kind of game, maybe contact us because we need more players.
My number 5 is Wingspan. I love Wingspan. I adore the cards. I think that just like the engine builder, it was kind of my introduction to engine builders. I think, you know, and it plays so smoothly. And you know, I really love the base game, and then as we added all of the expansions and like the player interaction increased, and you got to do stuff between rounds, and you know,
this is one where I feel like every expansion just makes the game better.
Yes, I think that they have done a really good job of building the expansions in a smart way that truly adds to the gameplay. And, you know, it's one of those that I just always hope that we have enough players that we can get through a lot of the deck. I think, you know, one downside of having so many cards is that you don't get to see all of the cards.
And now as they've added different areas, I mean, there's Oceania and Europe and now Asia. I mean, that's so many cards to go through that you basically have to take like a chunk of each country and then...
So
there's a little more setup.
Variety.
But it's definitely worth it.
So it is a wonderful game. Highly recommend it. And we've gotten several people started on that game. It is a great fun game to play. And also, something you didn't talk about, I discovered semi-recently that there is, it's not associated with the publisher at all, but there is a game called, or a phone app called Wingsong.
Oh, yeah.
Where you can scan your cards as you put them in your aviary, and it will play the bird song of that bird. And so you can kind of hear your collection of birds as you collect them. And I think that adds just such a cool ambiance.
Unless everybody's doing it, then it's just loud.
Well, okay. You got to make sure your phone is on low.
So my number 5 is the game that we've probably played, well, we certainly have played it the most.
Yes.
And that is Gloomhaven. Might be the crunchiest game that we own. I mean, it's right there with Twilight Imperium in terms of crunch. The big thing about Gloomhaven is it is a video game RPG that they just made into a board game.
It's true.
In fact, they actually made a video game version of this.
They sure did. It's long.
It's
I mean,
long. It's long, and it's a legacy game, so you are upgrading your character, you're upgrading your map, you are doing, there are quests that if you make one decision, it locks you out of other quests. And it is super cool. I mean, it's very engrossing. It has, as dense as it is, and as many miniatures as there are, and like standees and like map tiles and all of that, the actual gameplay system for it is kind of elegant.
It really is.
You've got a hand of cards. Depending on which character you're playing, your max hand limit is
more or less.
Or less. But typically it's around 10 cards. And that's also kind of like your life. It's also kind of your what you can do and what you can't do.
It's your powers.
So it's like, and you always, every turn you play 2 cards, and then when you have gone through most of your cards, you can choose to rest, get back your cards at the cost of one of them. It's a really neat system that kind of has like, it creates a sense of urgency.
It does. Definitely.
That being said, I mean, the rule book is so supremely thick because you have to learn how the monsters work, and you have to learn how all the turns work, and you have to learn, like about initiative order and how the monsters are going to move and like what all the different status conditions are. But it's a very rewarding system when you get really into it, because it's so fun to level up your character.
It is.
To check another box, to get another
pull
ability.
Out new cards,
Yeah, because the way that you attack is you've got another separate deck of cards. So instead of rolling a dice and getting an 11 and adding your modifiers to that, you essentially have an attack value that's on the card, and then you are flipping an attack card over to either give you a +1 or a -1, or there's a critical hit and there's a critical fail, which I think you've seen more than any other player in history.
I have bad luck with my Gloomhaven modifier deck.
But it is an absolute blast to play. You've got to have the time to get into it. You've got to have the time to get ready for it. It requires a lot of setup. I really like how Jaws of the Lion, a lot of the maps are just in the book.
Yeah, that is really nice.
But yeah, if you've got the time for it, and I could go on and on about it, but it is a great game. I'm super excited to finally finish it up and learn how the story goes. But we have played it now for like 50 different sessions.
Yeah, it's true.
And I'm still interested, and I still love opening boxes for when we get new stuff. So my number 5, Gloomhaven.
My number 4 is one that you've talked about on this list already, and that is the original Azul. Yeah, this is one, honestly, the game is so good, and I have enjoyed most of the variations that have come after. And, I think... honestly, my favorite addition to any of them is the fact that there's a, like, trash can. There's, like...
the actual trash can, though, is what you mean.
The receptacle for where you put the tiles whenever they get discarded, rather than just using the top of the box and trying to, like, dump them into that bag. I mean, they go everywhere. That's just the reality of the game. But... Azul is one that is beautiful in its simplicity, and it's one that we've played with a lot of people. It's one that we consistently return to, and whenever I think, oh, we should play Azul, like, the one that I want to play is the regular Azul. It is just such a good game. It is a classic for a reason, and it's one that they keep riffing on for a reason. And so I just really love Azul. And it's my number 4.
Great game.
Yeah, such a good game.
All right, I'm going to see if you can guess my number 4. My number 4 is a deck builder.
Oh, is it Quest for El Dorado?
It is, in fact, the Quest for El Dorado. This is my favorite deck builder, and for good reason.
It's a really good one.
I love that the deck building that you are doing in this game is purposeful.
Yes.
And not just is it purposeful, but you kind of can craft a strategy based on what you were putting into your deck.
Absolutely.
Because you create these different maps, and the maps have different terrains on them. You've got your jungle, you've got your desert, I guess, that you get through with coins somehow.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And then you've got water.
Yeah.
So, as you get further and further down the map, you might have more water, so it makes sense to get
to pick up.
traversal
Yeah.
options that are going to get you through water.
Mhm.
You might have more desert options, or you might want to increase how much you can buy, and so then you buy different things like that.
Well, yeah, and the cards also have like you're not just buying cards to fill up your deck. There are cards that you buy with the purpose of just expending their power. You know,
Yep.
like they could be some coins if you need
One-time use.
but the purpose is to get like a cool effect,
Right.
and then remove it from your deck and move on.
Right. There's also a really neat element of kind of burning cards in your hand, like
Yeah.
going to
Oh,
certain
yeah.
spots and then you trash cards. So you literally get rid of cards in your deck to replace them with stronger, more powerful
Yeah,
cards. So you've
absolutely.
got a lean but useful deck. Because
Right.
of course, the way each turn works is you draw up to 4 cards, and then you can play as many of those 4 cards as you want, and then discard whatever ones you don't use after your turn, or hold
Yep.
on to them for the next turn.
Yep.
What I really love about that is it makes sense to kind of keep your deck lean that way, especially in the end phase of the game, where
It
you're
does.
looking for very specific cards to get you across.
Right. Well, and there's definitely strategy that goes into that too, because the places where you can trash your cards are not necessarily the easiest spots to get to, and so you have to kind of weigh that option of, is it better for me to, spend a turn going out of my way
Right.
to improve my deck for later turns.
Right.
It's a hard decision, but sometimes it's going to be the right call.
Yeah, and the other thing that I really like about this game is how unique it is at different player counts. So when you play with 4 players, great game. 3, great game. 2 players, it's completely different, because now instead of moving 1 explorer across the map, you're actually working with 2. And so you might move 1 explorer 2 spaces and another one just 1. Why that's really neat is because you can use your own explorers to block
You sure can.
the other player
yeah.
from getting through their path, because they can't pass through you and they can't land on the same space that you're in. So it is so cool. I love the game. I love the artwork in it. I think the
It's very
aesthetic
cool.
is so cool.
Yeah.
But it is absolutely my favorite deck builder, and I just really love it a lot. Number 4 for me, The Quest for El Dorado.
Number 3 for me is one we just talked about, and that is Gloomhaven.
Had to be, yep.
Yep. So, like you said, we've played this game a lot.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. I mean, there's not much more that I can really say about it than what we've already said. I mean, it's a long game. Find some friends that are willing to go the long haul with you if you want to play it at 4 players. You also could play it. I mean, it's a solo game.
Yeah.
If you want it to be.
We also, I mean, there's a ton of content out there for Gloomhaven, and I thought about at one point, like, talking about our favorite characters and what we love about the game and going really in depth in that. And here's the thing. I would never play this game for a live audience.
No.
Because we cheat all the time.
It's one of those things where, you're playing it for so long, and are you going to follow this rule to the T that is designed for, like, the rules are built to cover 100 scenarios.
Right.
And
And the game is hard.
it is not easy. And
now we did learn that we were making it harder for ourselves because we weren't doing the formula correct for figuring out the difficulty, because the idea is you take the average level of all the players, divide that by the number of players, and then divide that by 2.
And then that's the level that you're back.
And that's the level that you should go at. So we've been playing on very hard mode almost
Yes.
the entire time.
That's true. But also, like, do you want to be miserable and kill off your characters, or do you want to have fun?
Right.
And so we definitely lean towards the have fun, and that's okay. Like, that's the point.
Yeah.
That is literally the point of playing games. And so,
Well, and I think that's the thing that keeps me from getting invested in the video game version is I'm like, I'm going to have to play by the rules.
that's fair.
And stuff is so expensive in the game, too. Like,
Yeah.
when you upgrade a card, it is a massive investment.
It's true. Yeah.
And gold is not easy to come by.
That's true. Yeah, another thing that we have kind of fudged. We have party gold,
Yeah.
which is not something you're supposed to do.
But it
I
does
mean,
make
it's one of those things where we're having a good time playing the game, and it's a good game.
It is.
It's a good game, and we also have Frosthaven waiting.
Yeah. One day,
One day when we finish Gloomhaven,
probably when Skyhaven comes out, we'll finally
Right.
get to it.
yeah. So my number 3
Space Haven.
is Gloomhaven.
Maybe.
Another
You don't know.
space game. Another space game.
Hey, they're popular.
That's true.
Speaking of which, my number 3 has nothing to do with space. But you knew this game was coming. Let's see if you can guess
Is
it.
it Concordia?
It is, in fact, Concordia. I just adore this game because of its simplicity. This is a game that is very unassuming when you first look at it. Board's
Yes.
kind of bland, the piece is kind of bland, but the gameplay just sings. Essentially, on your turn, it's a really quick, snappy type of situation
so
where
quick.
you play a card from your hand. That card dictates what action you take.
It
Maybe
tells
you
you
move.
exactly what you do on the card. Like, you don't have to constantly refer to a player guide,
Right.
which is a nice change from a lot of games.
Yep, you've got cards that let you buy more cards. You've got a card that lets you move. You've got a card that lets you get resources, and that's it. Like, you just play these cards, and then you've got one of my favorite things. You've got the card that lets you draw back all your cards. There's also a fun card that I mean, this is one of those interesting mechanisms that, like, not too many games let you do that. There's a card that just says copy any other player's last card that they play.
Oh, yeah, that's a nice one.
And that's very much part of your strategy, because if you want to move twice in one hand without drawing back your cards, you use that one to then, when the player has moved and you've got the resources you need. There's also some great mechanics around, like, how you get resources, and you at some point you like flip these tiles, and then somebody goes to the market and they basically go to a certain region and get all of the resources from the tiles that were flipped. And I just think that is such a unique thing, because
It really is.
you're constantly
Yeah.
battling about, like, oh, should I do it now? Okay, I'm going to do it next turn, and then the person right before you takes it.
Yep.
You're like, dang it, I
Yep.
missed it.
Yep. Some push your luck.
It's also just so fun to move around that board, whether
It
by
is.
land or by sea, opening up different ports, and you're trying to open a different port in just about every different area across like the Mediterranean. It is just a highly enjoyable game that
is.
doesn't overstay its welcome, and it knows exactly what it is. And I think that elegance and that just smoothness of gameplay.
Just imagine if it had better art.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably upgrades on like Etsy that you could get. Maybe you can get nice, like, smooth cloth pieces, which
Yeah.
right now they're literal cubes. But yeah, it is an absolute delight. Anytime people ask me, like, what's a game that I should get that doesn't take a super long time, but it's going to have some great strategy, this is my go-to.
Yeah.
I love it. Only takes about an hour and a half to play, even with 4 players.
Yeah. It's
So yeah,
quick.
my number 3, Concordia.
My number 2, can you guess what it is?
I can. I know what it is,
Yeah.
in fact. And it's delightful. It's adorable. And I think this is the first game you ever kickstarted.
Yeah. Is it?
I thought so.
I think Emerald Flame is the first one I kickstarted.
This is the second
Second
game
game.
you ever kickstarted.
Yeah.
And it's your number 2.
It is. So that game is Flamecraft.
Yep.
I love the art. I adore the gameplay.
Yeah.
I think that this is one of those like super pleasant games to play. It's like mildly competitive without feeling mean. In fact, one of the actions that you mentioned is literally give stuff to other people.
Yeah.
It encourages you to be generous and like help people.
This is the very definition of a cozy game.
Yes.
Where even the actions that you're taking that are competitive don't feel mean.
Right. And, I think that the worst you can do is get to an enchantment before somebody
Right.
else. It's such a good game.
Well, and we kind of played a little, adding a little bit more competitiveness to it, because in the game, the rulebook says if you go to a shop that another dragon occupies, you just have to give them a resource.
Right.
But we're always like, nah, screw that. I don't want to give them anything.
Right. That's true. That's true. But that's, another example of like, it's competitive without being like mean about it.
Right.
And it encourages kindness. And the little dragons are just so cute.
Worth mentioning that we do have the deluxe
We
edition
have the
of that
deluxe,
game.
right? I mean the dragons that are on the cards.
Yes.
Like the obviously the like dragon figurines are also cute.
Right.
But I just love looking at the cards that I get and finding a meat dragon named Hot Dog, or a bread dragon named Loaf. Like, it's just, it's
Yeah.
so cute.
Also, all the pun names for the different shops.
They're so good.
Like Critical Roles is a personal favorite of mine.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes, it is. It's darling. The gameplay is good. It is solid.
It is.
And
I think a lot of people look at the box art for this and they're like, "Oh, this is a cutesy game for kids."
yeah,
And it absolutely can be.
Sure, it
But
definitely
it's got
could be.
enough depth in there that as people that like crunchy games, we both constantly come back to it. And it's one that anytime we are like looking for a game to play, that is such a simple one to bring to the table.
It's true. It's always good. It's always fun. It's always cute.
Yeah.
So I love Flamecraft, and it's my number 2 game
Awesome.
of all time.
Of all time. That we played that
Yeah.
Okay, my number 2 is it's crunchy,
Okay.
but I think there's an element of coziness into it in that
Sure.
it's just got great gameplay. And we've talked about a lot of games. I haven't talked about this one. Do you know what it is?
I don't know if I do.
I'll give you a hint. It involves animals.
Is it Ark Nova?
It is, in fact, Ark
Really?
Nova. I
Whoa!
really love
Oh,
Ark Nova.
man.
So you take everything that I said about terraforming Mars
Uh-huh.
and everything that I love about that. This does all of that with a theme that I think is just immensely better.
Sure.
You're essentially building a zoo,
Yeah.
and so you have kind of a you're not terraforming, but you're building out your zoo
Right.
with different enclosures and
Like little hexes in polyomino type
but it has
shapes.
that same kind of like when you're terraforming on Mars and you're putting those pieces down. It has
absolutely.
that same aspect, and then you've also got the tableau building with the cards that you can have kind of a zoo specialty. Like you can specialize in primates or reptiles or birds if you wanted to have a terrible zoo. But what I just love about it is it's one of those games where you're just constantly getting stuff.
It's true.
You're getting more money. You're getting more conservation points. And it has one of the most unique in-game triggers that I think I've seen in a game.
the opposing
Yeah, so
lines.
you've got
yeah.
one score track that's keeping track of your conservation score. And then you've got another score track that's just tracking your
Is it popularity?
reputation.
Reputation.
No, it's not reputation.
It's
They're, like,
popularity, right?
something like that. I
Yeah.
don't remember what the exact term is. But once somebody crosses those two paths, the game ends. And then the way that it scores is that you basically count backwards. So whatever your conservation is, you count how many steps away that is from your reputation or whatever it is, and then you subtract those number of spaces. I think that is so cool.
It is very unique.
It makes it really easy to score at the end of the game,
Yes.
too, instead of just like going through and adding up all your cards for victory points. I just think that game is one that it starts off a little bit slow, kind of
It
like
does.
Terraforming
It
Mars,
does.
but once it starts ramping up,
Yeah.
every turn you're just so excited
You're
for.
doing so much.
Mhm.
And the cards become much more attainable because you have the resources to get them.
And we talked about this when we talked about Civilization, but it has that interesting mechanism where you've got 5 action cards, and that's what you're
yeah.
going to take one of those actions on your turn. But whichever actions you don't take, those slide down the
in
line,
power.
and so they increase in power.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's different about that compared to something like Civilization, though, is that there are times where you really need for that power to be at its number 5 place,
That's
so that
true.
you can take it at its strongest. And they also give you a mechanism for strengthening those cards
Yeah.
with a resource that you can get that essentially ups the ante on those. So I really like that game. It is a little bit of a dense teach, but
It
once you
is.
have people
Yeah.
that know it, have played it once, it is just such a great game to get to the table.
Well, because you leave the game thinking, somebody else did that cool thing, and maybe I want to try going all in on petting zoos next time
Yeah.
because I love the goats.
Spoilers,
or something like
you
that.
don't.
You
That's-
don't. But maybe the large animals weren't pulling for you, and
Right.
you really wanted to have elephants. Like next time the card shuffling might be in your favor. It's just you want to see the next cards. You want to collect something different.
Yeah, and I think what I really like about it is even though you are kind of at the mercy of the card shuffle, that is better with 4 players because the
You
shots
get
are
through
churning
you get through the deck
a little more. But there are different avenues that you can go. Like you can specialize in a certain country, or you can specialize in conservation projects that just happens to go with your strategy. So there's lots of ways to win.
Yeah.
Just by kind of following what you're doing.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I love it. My number two.
Number 2.
Ark Nova. So Kara, I've done a quick little bit of math. And before you reveal your number 1, I think we've got the same number 1.
You think so?
I'm almost certain, unless this didn't make your list, and I would be absolutely surprised if it didn't. So I think on the count of 3, we both say what our number 1 is.
Okay.
What do you think?
Sure.
And if they're different, then we edit it and no one will ever know. Just kidding. I haven't learned how to do any of that. All right.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Blood on the Clock Tower. Yeah. Yes, that's right. You heard us correctly. Blood on the Clock Tower. We're those kind of people.
Yeah, it's so fun.
So I think the thing to know about Kara and I is we are both theater nerds and performance nerds. And we also really love escape rooms and logic puzzles.
Oh, love escape rooms.
And this game is all of those.
Yes, it is.
It's
so
Werewolf
good.
on crack.
Well,
I mean,
and I don't know that I've ever actually played Werewolf.
Sure.
I know people say that a lot, but I don't think I've ever played it.
Mafia.
The
Okay.
old school
Those are the same game.
deck of cards
Yeah.
that you pull. Yeah, I've played like the like middle school version.
This is basic. I mean, Pandemonium Institute essentially took games like that they really enjoyed, and they said, "Hey, what if we made it so that like everybody did something different?"
Well, and that is really the beauty of the game because they've made it so that everybody has a reason to lie.
Right.
And it just makes everything get so twisted and tangled, and it's just so good.
Now, there's a couple of caveats to this game because there's a lot of barriers to entry on it.
Absolutely.
Number 1, it's expensive. I mean,
Sure.
We got it as part of the Kickstarter, which it was $100 at the time. Then I think now it has ballooned to $150 with inflation and shipping and all that. But you get a lot in that box because all the different rolls and all the tokens, they're velvet lined so that you can lay them in the book and they don't move around, which is really important for the storyteller.
Walk around with said book.
Yeah, because you're managing a lot, and they thought of a lot of those things where you've got tokens and you've got checklists that you're going through each night depending on what roles you have. So that's one thing. It's important to be mindful of the price. The next thing is this is a game that works best at 10 plus players.
It's true.
I mean, this is a party game by definition in that if you're going to play it, you need to have a party of people.
Yeah.
There's, you can play it with, they say you can play it with anywhere between 5 to 20, but I think the sweet spot is between 10 and 15.
Yeah.
So, you need a lot of commitment from friends that are willing to play it.
It is one that is hard to schedule. We played it a few times in 2023, but definitely not as much as either of us would have liked.
The next caveat is that it's super dense because every role has a different power. You've got to get everybody into a room and explain to everybody that's never played it before how all the different powers work and how it's going to run during the game.
I mean, when we have scheduled these games, anytime we have somebody new, we say, you guys need to come at 6 and everyone else come at 7 because we need this whole hour to explain it to you to catch up.
Well, and the storyteller or the person giving all the rules, they really have an important job of saying like, hey, I'm going to go through all of these roles and how that's going to work, even though some of these roles aren't going to be in the game.
Yeah, but you have to know how all of those all of those roles work too, because that adds you don't know what's in the game.
Right, and you might have to bluff that you know how it works.
Exactly.
Which sometimes you can say like, I'm sorry, I'm new, I probably messed that up.
Absolutely a valid strategy.
And I'd say the next big caveat for the game is you have to have a storyteller.
Yes.
So you have to have a person that is willing to not play the game, that's essentially creating the enjoyment for everybody else. And that goes from like picking out who's
What
going to be what
roles.
roles, and you do it randomly for the most part. I tend not to give new players like the ultimate evil card because that's a lot of pressure right away.
It is a lot of pressure.
But you need somebody that kind of understands the elements of the game and is going to be able to craft a different story, because it's one thing to just totally do it by random, but it's another to say like, well, the drunk is actually going to be the Undertaker, and that's why I'm going to make it this character or this person, because hey, that's going to set up this really interesting conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
That said, when all of those things click, this is maybe the most fun that I have ever had playing board games.
So fun. Do you think, because you have now played, you're usually our storyteller.
Yes.
But you have had the opportunity to play as a...
And I won.
You did win. You played as a citizen of Ravenswood Bluff.
Yes.
Do you prefer playing as a citizen or being the storyteller?
Well, they're totally different experiences.
Sure, that's totally fair.
When you are the storyteller, there's a lot to manage, and being able to manage that well is a skill.
Sure.
Not to toot my own horn, but as somebody that does a lot of public speaking and a lot of improvising and thinking on my feet, that speaks so well to what I love to do.
Right. Well, and the level of organization also.
Yeah.
Yes.
You've got to have a lot of organization. You've got to have a lot of forethought and a lot of planning that goes into it. That being said, playing it is such a treat because...
it is a trip, I will say.
Yeah, because even if you're really good at reading people, even if you know when people are lying, there, like you said, there's a reason that good characters might lie. And I think the hardest thing about this game for new players and people that haven't played a lot of social deduction games is when it comes to the voting for execution, sometimes you've got to kill good players.
It's true.
Because then you get more information. And some people are like, oh, I don't want to kill that person because I know they're good. And sometimes you got to just be ruthless and be like, nah, we're going to off you because we got to get more info.
Yeah, well, and that's where, sometimes playing with a mix of like people that are brand new to the game and people who are experienced players can be challenging, because it kind of sets up the people that are like, no, guys, this is how the game's played. We have to kill people.
Right.
That's
what an evil person would say, Kara.
Exactly. You kind of set yourself up for that kind of that jump reaction of, oh my God, they're trying to like get rid of good players. They must be evil.
Right.
And, that also is it's such a fun dynamic. And if you're on the evil team, you definitely play off of that. You exploit those areas in the system.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's such a good game. It's so well designed.
It is. Well, and I think what's really cool about the game itself is they could have just given you one set of characters and said like, okay, that's it, enjoy the game. But you actually get 3 different what they call scripts or characters that work really well together. And so you've got 3 different sets that increase in difficulty exponentially.
Complexity.
Complexity, all of that across the board. And we've really only played the first set because we keep getting new players that come.
Yeah,
which is great.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
But it would be really hard for a first-time player to say, like, hey, we're doing the 3rd level script, and so I have to explain all of these mechanisms, and good luck figuring it out. Right. Also, because it's random, you're the big bad, good luck.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot that goes into making this a great experience. But if you are somebody that loves to host and you love to hold parties and you wouldn't mind being a storyteller, because honestly, my favorite part of the whole game is when everything comes to a close and I go, all right, let me tell you how all this went down.
Yes, the recap.
It is always so enjoyable. It's equal parts intriguing puzzle and equal parts just like hilarious kind of farce.
Yes. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the characters and like you play it up, but it ends up being kind of larger than life. Even if you don't have people that are like super theatrical and out there, like everyone.
We fortunately do.
We do, and that makes it very fun, I will say.
And,
Yeah.
you know, if you'd like to see a live Blood on the Clock Tower played, that might be something that we could arrange.
Maybe. We'll
It
see.
would, yeah. It would take a lot of effort, but I would be down to learn how to do it. It is just such a fun game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, our shared number one, Blood on the Clock Tower.
Our only shared
Yeah.
number. I'm a little surprised. We had some that were really close.
Yeah. Well, and I think with a list of 100 games, we're going to have that. I mean, as we talked about at the beginning, it felt like our tastes were really different. But the last couple of lists, they've started to sync up a lot more.
It's true. There's a lot more. They're a lot closer than we think.
Yeah. So that brings us to the end of our top 100 games of all time. What'd you think?
Yeah, I hope you've had a fun time talking or listening to us talk about board games.
Leave a comment. Let us know what some of your favorite games are. What are some games that we have yet to mention on our list that we've absolutely got to try out? Or which one of us do you agree with more? I mean, are you more of a cozy gamer? Are you more of a crunchy gamer? We'd love to know all of that. Also, just a note for everybody that's joining our channel right now. We've gotten some comments about like, hey, can you add pictures? Could you add timestamps? The answer to that is, yeah, probably. I don't know how to do any of that yet. So
we're still super new to this.
I am really looking forward to learning how to use these tools a little bit better. So you might tune back in and see how we've figured all of that stuff out and how it comes together, because I am very much an avid believer in constantly growing. So we intend to do that.
Yeah.
So what's next? Well, we've got ideas for other top 10 lists.
Yeah.
Generally, that'll be shorter than, I guess, after all of this, we've got like 10 hours of content.
It's true. Yeah. Top 10 lists of different types of things. We've already thrown out a couple of ideas over the course of this top 100 series.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I really am looking forward to, like we talked about at the beginning, really kind of honing our crunchy and cozy ratings for a lot of the games that we've talked about. Because we've talked around them a lot, but as we've been trying to keep our lists secret and separate, we've only been talking about our games generally, not necessarily in like super detail. So I'm really excited to dig into that.
Yeah.
I'm excited to do more unboxings of the games that we have kickstarted that are coming this year.
Yeah.
And ones that we pick up other places. Yeah.
I think it's super exciting, but this is just the beginning of Crunchy Cozy Games. So if you've enjoyed our top 100 games list, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for every unboxing, for every deep dive into our favorite games. And then, of course, I'm sure we'll put together another top 100 after all our games this year.
Yep.
So stay tuned. Thanks for stopping by.
Bye.
Bye-bye.